This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. Get a whole month free at mubi.com/SpikimaMovies. Trey Edward Schultz's 2017 film It Comes at Night was and still is one of the most impressively daunting films I've ever watched, but mainly because I approached it from a slightly different angle. One thing you have to understand is that It Comes at Night isn't a film that connects with the audience through accessible on-screen actions. Attempting to view and decipher the film from a purely narrative standpoint is a pointless endeavor. Instead, it must be viewed from the outside, using off-screen information. That's what makes this film special. For instance, how would you perceive this scene made up of just two continuous shots featuring two characters if there were no sound? What kind of information could you get? Well, for one, we know that there are constant shifts in perspective. Whenever the scene is being shown in perspective of man 1, the camera moves freely without any restrictions, while the shots stay relatively more fixed and limited when in perspective of man 2, who is tied to a tree. We also know that there is a significant level of deception involved in this interaction, as many shots of the two men are either in profile or are partially blocked to obscure their true intentions. In fact, you can pinpoint the exact moment this man tells a lie by noting when the camera moves to the other side of the axis, revealing a side that wasn't previously revealed.
So your brother's out there too?
No,
Where did he go?
he's dead.
Big family?
No, it's just me and my dad, and
You're an only child?
yeah.
Lastly, we can tell that the conversation probably ends with a mutual agreement, since their visual relationship evolves from singles and over-the-shoulder shots to a proper two-shot by the end. But this two-shot is also in profile, meaning the scene ends by asking the audience to make a decision, to side either with man 1 or man 2. It's a beautifully tense interaction that foreshadows the men's tragic fate caused by their suspicion and places the audience in an uncomfortable position of doubt, delivered just with the camera work. The non-verbal communication of this kind is the crux of It Comes at Night, revealing everything the vague story and the dialogue cannot and does not describe. Sometimes extra information is even delivered through changing aspect ratios. Although both scenes are similar in nature, you can see that the first one has a ratio of 2:39:1, whereas the second has a ratio of 2:75:1. The first scene also uses a spherical lens for a sharp, realistic image, while the second uses an anamorphic lens for a softer, dreamlike image. If you're wondering, the anamorphic lenses are also known for their pronounced lateral lens flares, which you can spot right here. As a cherry on top, the two scenes again feature the character in profile, which not only implies mystery and secrecy, but importance, as the profile shots are repeated again and again for this particular character. As you can see, removing the scene's narrative context forces you to read the film with a different language. An out-of-the-frame cinematic rhythm that is subtly reflected inside, on screen, as visible details. But these techniques do more than give information about the characters and their inner states. As you've probably felt from the previous examples, their primary objective is in creating an atmosphere, specifically one of dread and anxiety. The first example is obvious, as the scene leaves you with a nervous suspicion about the confronting characters. But the second scene that uses an anamorphic lens also turns out to be a depiction of a nightmare, and the hypnotic quality of the lens amplifies its unsettling mood. This is why the last act of the film is shot on a spherical lens, but presented in a ratio of 3:1, illustrating how their nightmares have now become their reality. But there's an even more effective technique in this film that generates uninterrupted, unconscious fear for the audience. A technique that is representative of this film's overall theme. The slow tracking shots. Take a look at this opening sequence where we have our protagonists, Paul, Travis, and Sarah, around a dining table in silence. It's a faint change, but the camera is ever so slightly moving in toward Travis, who is at the center of the frame. This is actually a repeating visual motif of It Comes at Night. Characters in the center, with the camera moving in or out. The byproduct of this is an abundance of head-on or tail-away shots that intensify the psychological impact of a given scene by placing the audience dead center with the action on screen that is either directly accelerating toward or away from them. But that's not all. The movement itself is a fascinating device, having a ghost-like, inhuman flow that indicates its omnipotence, an all-encompassing force that drives the characters toward an inevitable fate. This is what causes our hearts to race and our panic to grow, even in scenes that seem normal. In fact, the entire film is essentially a long single movement, with short pauses in between denoting the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. It's a constant cycle of problem and resolution, action versus inaction, movement versus stagnation, until the film comes to a permanent stop and ends. Fear comes from a simple belief, a belief that there is danger right around the corner. It's a feeling of an impending doom, damaging your integrity and balance even before it actually happens. It's the obstacle that breaks down the symmetry of your life, a reason why the mentioned movements are often paired with symmetrical arrangements on screen, and why they keep falling apart, by the structure itself or by the unfortunate characters of this tragic story. We see it in the gatherings, the intimacies, or in the surroundings, quietly suffocating the characters who are bound to self-destruct. They always end up shattering and destabilizing their world by moving too close or too far. But what the film covertly suggests is that the visual completeness itself is a flaw, as it illustrates physical safety with no guarantee for a psychological one. Many instances of asymmetry are actually pictures of a different type of balance, created instead through emotional bonding that holds stronger than visible geometric cohesion. Love. The visual perfection we see on screen is therefore more about selfishness than sacrifice, which in turn becomes just another source of unconscious problem for the characters and the audience. It Comes at Night is just that, an unstoppable momentum under forced symmetry. The worst kind of fear, an unending suffering of doubt and self-slaughter. What good does safety bring if it means the loss of everything you ever loved? The same goes with the movements, which weren't a problem after all. It was a necessary anxiety, a basic state of existence required to survive, the motivation to keep on moving. Once that disappears, there's nothing to look forward to solve, or to live for. That's the silent dread of this film. Not that there is a problem ahead, but that it will eventually all go away.
Good night, Kim.
Good night.
No movement, no struggle, and no life. What comes at night would never matter when there's no day to look forward to. Hello everyone, thanks as always for watching. It Comes at Night is a very particular film when it comes to using cinematic tricks as its forefront device of communication, but most if not all other films also use similar techniques to maximize their delivery, even if they are more story-focused. One genre that I think seems to be neglected nowadays in this discussion is documentary. But documentaries can be and are just as cinematically meticulous, if not more. A great example being Rahul Jain's Invisible Demons, which you can watch right now on Mubi, the sponsor of this video. If you don't know, Mubi is an online curated cinema streaming service that premieres a new hand-picked film every day, from iconic directors to emerging filmmakers. A great way to watch films you love and explore new films you haven't watched before. Like I said, if you're in Canada like I am, you can watch Rahul Jain's Invisible Demons, a great cinematic documentary exploring the consequences of India's growing economy and capturing our collective climate realities, as well as other great films through Mubi's library. And you can get an extended 30-day free trial today if you head over to mubi.com/SpikimaMovies. That's mubi.com/SpikimaMovies. So go check it out. Thanks for watching, and that's it for me.